I once almost got an international university to help me run an experiment that I later realized, even if we ran it, it would not be publishable, no matter what the results were, because the theoretical foundation in formal linguistics was not sufficient to understand what the hell I had done if I did it. Turned out like funding dried up and it wasn't going to work out anyway. People left the project, but it was close to being a successful misadventure in the realm of impossible science. So the the general situation here. See if I can remember this correctly. So there was a guy, like a PhD student of linguistics in Turkey that I had made the acquaintance of, and let's see, he wanted to do a study on Troyo, which is a Neo-Aramaic language spoken in Torabden. Torabden? Yeah. It's like southern, kind of central, maybe a little bit east Turkey, in a region that is now largely taken over by Kurds. Um, and the population had primarily fled into Europe, predominantly into Sweden, as I recall, because of this Kurdish sort of takeover of the land. And yeah, kind of a genocidal takeover. So yeah, there's a lot of fun there, right? So wanted to do like a documentation project, kind of like see, okay, what can we help like preserve this language and this culture or something. Turns out no. It's the way we wanted to set things up and conduct business. Um, our ethical standards were a little too high for the agency that was going to be funding it. So they were like, "No, this isn't how you do it. You're supposed to use bachelor student slave labor for all of your data processing and shit like that." And I'm like, "Fuck you guys." But we'd still like, you know, he's still a PhD student. He still wants to do a project. He still wants to do some stuff. So I was like, okay, well that didn't work. I learned some Terrario though. There was a point where I could pretty much speak it. Um, There's this one point where we asked a German uh, researcher about if he could give us any assistance, and he like, I don't know, he acted like he was mad that we didn't come to him in the first place, and then he said it was a joke. But I'm like, dude, like your grandfather was a Nazi. You can't joke about shit like this. Stop. You're not funny. Also, Germany refused most of the requests for asylum, immigration from Turkey, because they wanted to keep on good terms with Turkey. They knew full well what was happening. Anyway, this is a total aside from what I was going to say. Yeah, no, but I wasn't pleased with that. Fuck. Okay, so the project. So my idea was to sort of examine to what degree um, formal linguistics claims were actually accurate. And this is no small feat, and people have been working on it for a long time. But my idea was actually the idea is simple. The implementation probably impossible, and not because it would be hard to do, but because it would be hard to do in a way that any professional linguistic nativist working with like formal linguistics would actually understand what the fuck you just did or trust that what you did was correct, right? That's the problem. The problem isn't doing it. It isn't collecting the data. It isn't verifying the data. It isn't, right? It's convincing anyone that you did it correctly. And the problem is, well, so what I was going to do is going to give them your subjects. They would look at they would be given like a couple sentences or something, and then a little questionnaire asking what was it about. Some specific things like what time of day did it happen, how many people were involved, things like that. Very basic things, right? And the idea was in the what we're testing is you have some perfectly normal, in this case it would be Turkish, right? Perfectly normal Turkish sentences that make perfectly fine sense. And what we would do is we would take these things and we would tree them. We could see the internal structure of what's going on, and then so this one is perfectly fine, and then we take maybe change the words a little bit, change the details of it a little bit, but then like jack up the structure internally, but to varying degrees, right? So, and that's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. You're just so like there'd be like maybe 3 to 5 different levels of this, right? So there would be the one that's perfectly fine, and then like the worst one would just be like completely garbled, random nonsense, right? So pretty much we're expecting the first one they'll get everything, the last one they'll get nothing, and then the ones in the middle we can kind of see what's going on there. And if we can hit, if we can get 100, 200 subjects, we should be able to get some really good data out of this. The problem was, I, at this point, had a little bit of a reputation with formal linguists. So, I couldn't be the one that garbled the sentences and made the trees. We had to have somebody else do it. Because if I did it, nobody would believe it was real. Because I was... So like, no, he doctored it. Right? That's the problem. The problem isn't doing it. The problem isn't doing it correctly. The problem is trust. That's the problem. Also, we looked around for linguists that could do this, specifically with Turkish, which does limit it somewhat. And we found a couple people, but they couldn't really grasp what I was trying to do, because the whole goal was of treeing a sentence is that you tree a good sentence, or you take some real data and you figure out what the tree is for that. Nobody, I don't think, up to this point, had tried producing garbled trees. Like, especially to a precise degree, which I could do. I can show you the mathematics of how to do that, and like that's fine. I can teach you how to do this. But I couldn't even get somebody to understand what the hell it was we were really trying to do. So I can't do it myself because of the trust issue, because of, and I can't find anybody else to do it because they don't even understand what I'm doing, which is why it's worth doing this, right? That's exactly the kind of thing you want to be in on. The shit that nobody understands, that you have to explain it, and then once they see it, if you could see this, if we could run this experiment and you could see it, you'd be like, oh, shit, that's genius. No matter what the results are, right? No matter what the results are, it would be really, really nice. It'd be really, really clean, nice data. You'd be like, yes, these tree structures are real to this degree. Like, pretty much unambiguously. Much more unambiguously than previous studies had looked into it. So I couldn't find anybody. And then a while later, I think it was maybe 6 months later or so. So, pretty much that project dried up. I don't know, maybe 6 months later, something like that. I was mentioning that this was an impossible experiment that I couldn't run. And this lady who I never had as a professor, and having spoken to her a little bit, I'm pretty glad of it. She's not the kind of person that I would get along with. She's a little too big for her britches, and not humble at all. No humility, no sense of humor. Yeah, very bold claims, always making very bold claims. The fact that she went to MIT and studied under Noam Chomsky, that gave her, in her mind, the right to say anything she fucking wanted to say. I call bullshit on that, but whatever. So she's like, oh yeah, no, I know several Turkish linguists that specialize in Turkic languages. You should have asked me. I was like, do you mean? And then I named a couple guys, and she's like, oh yeah, they would help you. I'm like, no, they can't. They don't understand what I was trying to do. And neither do you, by the way, lady. So that was fun. I sometimes still pull out like some of the like preparatory research materials for the Toroyo program project. Yeah, it'd just be like Toroyo music blasting through the house. Anyway, yeah, not all questions are approachable by science, even the ones that should be.